So it's been a wonderful Shabbat here in Phoenix. First time ever in Phoenix. I can say that.
Wow.
I think the last time I was in Arizona was probably the first and last time was when I was a little kid, and parents took a trip with us out west. My father was a principal of a Jewish high school in New York City, and he used to bring Talmidim out on trips during the summer. That's how they kept them occupied and educated even during the summertime. So I remember being a little kid and jumping at the four corners of the 4 states and going to the Grand Canyon. But I imagine most of my memories are from the pictures and not from actually remembering doing it. But it's a pleasure being back here. So who am I and why am I here? So again, my name is Avi Abelo, born in New York City, bar mitzvah in New York City. My father was in Chinuch. He was a principal of a high school in New York City and then started a high school in Baltimore, Maryland. Then I was also going to be a student of my father as my principal. And most people say, oh my God, that must have been horrible. No, it was beautiful. Had a wonderful relationship with my father as my principal. Had a blast. It was the politics of the Jewish community that caused problems and wanted to make issues between me and my father. But that's a different lecture for another series. But my parents, Baruch Hashem, made Aliyah when I was 16 years old, and straight to Efrat. And today, my wife, who is also from New York, and I, we have 4 boys, and we also live in Efrat, just a 5-minute drive, just a 5-minute walk away from my parents down the hill in the Zayat community of Efrat. That's just a little bit about me. What do I do, and what am I doing here? I run an organization called the 12 Tribe Films Foundation, and it started because I produced a movie about the Jewish community, the Jews in Gaza, back in the year 2006. And the movie is it's called Home Game, and everyone can watch it online. Hopefully I'm about to have some screenings in Los Angeles, and one of the schools here in Phoenix are actually showing it to their kids now. I'm going to be speaking to them on Tuesday, please God. It's about the last youth basketball tournament that took place the summer of the disengagement, 2005, which I called the Gaza expulsion. And I made it back then, even though I have no background in marketing. I'm an organizational psychologist, worked as a marketing consultant for one of the big 4 global consulting firms, Accenture, out of the New York office, then opens up their Tel Aviv office. And it was while I was working as a consultant in Tel Aviv. This is a whole different lecture series. I produced this movie because I believed it was important for the Jews around the world, especially the Jews, to see who these people were, what they experienced, what they went through, and the price they paid for a political decision, while what we're experiencing right now is very similar in a sense, where the Jewish world created a division between the Jewish people based on a political decision. You were for the disengagement, against the disengagement, and if you were against it, then all of a sudden you were an enemy of the Jewish people, and you're an enemy of peace, and it was very, very disgusting, and it hurt me terribly, and it was very important for me to get the true story of who these people were, and hence I made that movie and screened it all over the world, and spoke at screenings all over the world. That then spearheaded me to leave my consulting career and decide to go into media, because there is very little, and this is 2006, 2007, there was no media at the time focused on the truth about Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, based on Torah Yisrael. Nothing. All the media out there, whether it's the establishment media, whether it's movies, whether it's videos, it was nothing supportive, even coming out of the Jewish world and the Jewish media. So I made that career change, set up my nonprofit organization, and since then I've been involved in different media projects, which today, the main project is my own daily program called The Pulse of Israel.
I watch it all the time.
I watch it. It was wonderful for people coming up to me at shul today saying, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing you in person. I'm not the only one. And saying thank you, because they listen or watch my podcast every day. So it's pulseofisrael.com. Everyone is welcome to sign up and go to that website. And it's basically me going through current events on a daily basis about Israel issues, Jewish people issues, freedom-loving world issues. And again, from a Jewish perspective, from an Emuni perspective, Torah-based perspective, understanding the reality. And I call myself the politically incorrect truth that, unfortunately, not many other people, even in the Jewish world, are not willing to go and say, because it's politically incorrect. And in today's world, I think we're all very attuned to the price one pays for being politically incorrect. And I could say I'm probably the most censored Jew on social media.
Wow.
You can still find me, but people hardly see me. Even though I was one of the first on Facebook back in 2008, one of the first accounts on YouTube 2006 when it started, one of the first on Twitter when it was a desert like you have here in Arizona, for 2 years before people started tweeting. I already started to experience the censorship in 2016. We built up, already back then, we built up a network of Facebook pages of millions of likes, of millions of followers. In 2016, Facebook deactivated one of our largest pages of 500,000 followers because we made a post that said it's called Israel, not Palestine.
Wow.
So in 2016, we lost 500,000 followers. So I was already talking about the censorship that was coming, that no one believed me. I knew it was coming down the pipe on social media. It was a vada, it was given that it was going to happen, that if you didn't toe the line of whatever issues, the accepted political correct opinions, you were going to be shut down. So today, yes, we still have 2 million followers on our Facebook following, but we really went in the email direction, and so we have over 200,000 subscribers on our email list, and that's how we have Chana and other people who receive our videos every day, and my video, my Pulse of Israel program.
Shabbat.
Not on Shabbat. But,
I just want to make it clear, because, you know.
Okay. And we have another news-oriented website called IsraelUnwired.com. So people looking for a more politically incorrect understanding of news dealing with the Jewish people in the land of Israel. So that's another outlet you can go check out. One of the main purposes I use my voice for is I want Jews to be proud Jews. And I believe in today's environment, on the one hand, and in today's world, on the other hand, we're very blessed to have the one component that allows Jews to be the most proud Jews we can be, probably in over 2,000 years. And that is, even with whatever complaints and problems we have with the modern Jewish state of Israel, it is still the Jewish state of Israel that we're supposed to be l'taken olam malchut shadai. It's for us to make better in order to be the place that we want it to be. But the fact that we have a Jewish state of Israel is something that should put deep pride into each and every Jew around the world, regardless of religious affiliation, regardless of political opinions. It doesn't make a difference. And I use the existence of Israel and the history, whether modern history or ancient history or biblical history, to help educate as many people as possible, whether adults or whether collegiates or whether high school students, to be able to grow and develop and strengthen their Jewish identity and pride in their Jewish identity. Another thing that I use my voice to try to get out there, using this development of pride, is to help fight the growing anti-Semitism today. Right? Because let's put it to you this way, the way I explain it to people. We can't fight anti-Semitism. It's a wrong term. That's the term everyone uses, so I'm going to use it as well. But it's a misnomer. It's an irrational aspect of humanity that Jews are hated. There's no rational reason to hate us. Reasons are made up. It was always there, it'll always be there. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. So it's not, my purpose in fighting anti-Semitism is not to make it go away, because I have no control over someone's feelings, whether they hate me or they hate my people. But what I do have control of is how much a Jew, and especially a high school kid or a collegiate, understands and knows about his own identity and the truth about what's going on with the Jewish state of Israel, to be able to not be affected and not be scared by the anti-Semitism around him or her. So one of the programs we're working on right now is exactly that, to reach out to the collegiates and reach out to high school students on an individual basis and mentor them and empower them to be able to use their voices to not only be able to stand up for themselves, but use their own networks to be able to impact their friends and circles and social media circles as well. Because unfortunately, I've been talking about growing anti-Semitism for 30 years, and the Jewish world has been asleep. Asleep. I'll give you a little example of this. And again, I'm going to go into the whole thing about Israel and the tragedy we experienced and everything coming up. Back in 1997, I was living in Riverdale, New York. Anyone who's in New York or a New Yorker knows one of the major papers of New York is the Jewish Week, or it used to be. I have no clue today. Been out of there for over 20 years. I remember reading an article in the Jewish Week, 1997, where it was saying how proud all the Jewish organizations were that they were helping the incoming migrant Muslims from the Middle East to establish themselves as organizations in the organizational world, to be better, how to interact with the local level, with the state level, with the federal level. Because as immigrants, we succeeded in developing our organizational infrastructure to work here in America. And now we want to help, we're good Jews, we want to help another new immigrant population. That was the Muslim population at the time in the 1990s. I wrote a letter to the editor of Jewish Week. This is 1997. I said, you don't understand. Don't you see what's happening in Europe? You are burying the grave of American Jewry by actively working to help the Muslims integrate and establish themselves here in America. This is in 1997. Right? So to me, it was already clear as day. And looking at Europe, what was going on, it was clear as day what was going to happen to America. It wasn't Avamina B'chlal. Right? It was clear. But again, it's now taken October 7th, almost 30 years later, for the Jewish world, some of the Jewish world, to wake up. And unfortunately, our collegiates and our high school students are not prepared. Everyone's in shock. Everyone's in shock. And forgive me for those who heard me today if I repeat some things that you said today for the benefit of everyone else. But for instance, I'll give you a little example. Just this week, I was listening to a video of a British journalist interviewing some Muslim, whether clerics or influencers, at the same time of interviewing Douglas Murray. And this is just one out of many, many Muslim voices which have now been repeated across the world. Where on the one hand, they're saying October 7th didn't happen. Other times they say, well, it did happen, but it's a legitimate resistance. Right? Murdering innocents is a legitimate resistance. And this guy went even further. And this is where our enemies are so good and where we're so bad. What did he say in this interview? He said, I'm not going to call Hamas a terrorist organization, but Israel is a terror state. Right? They have the gall to make up lies and exaggerate things that then put us on the defense all the time. Instead of being able to stand up for ourselves, our organizations, spokespeople, people on the ground, we're always playing whack-a-mole, just having to try to fight their lies. We're never able to say our case. Because every day it's another lie. And we're always on the defense, fighting off new lies. We have no connection to the land. The Holocaust didn't happen. You're only in Israel because of the Holocaust. Now we're a terror state. There are resistance every day. And you go, and these college students, and I think, and again, college students is too late. They already haven't been educated enough to know what they're getting themselves into. And this has been for years. These kids have to be educated already in high school properly. And they're not getting the proper education from our Jewish high schools. Like, these are our Jewish institutions. They're not getting it. And I'll give you one example. And again, this is something I spoke about earlier. That 12 years ago, I was part of a delegation sent to college campuses in America on anti-Israel apartheid week. And I was sent to Berkeley. Right? Now, 12 years ago, Berkeley was the #1 anti-Semitic campus. Right? It saddens me to say, as a Columbia graduate, that today Columbia is rated as the #1 anti-Semitic college campus. Right? But 12 years ago it was Berkeley. So I was on this campus to help the students, right? And we went down to the campus square where the anti-Israel activists were doing their street theater. They had an apartheid wall, right? They were dressed up as Israeli soldiers with guns, pulling people's hair, throwing them to the ground, putting the guns in their faces, right? Trying to influence all the students walking by this street theater in the middle of the campus. And what were the Jewish students doing? They were standing on the side with signs. And I remember as clear as day. Some of the signs were, Israel wants peace. And it's shocking and embarrassing to say. Some of them were, Israel created the cherry tomato. Israel's the startup nation. Israel does this for Turkey. And I'm standing there thinking to myself, these Jewish students, they're playing a different ball game. They're not provided with the information to fight the mound and narrative of lies that goes against the justice of our existence, B'chlal. But these kids are not prepared with that information. The Jewish world for decades has been so embarrassed about our existence in Judea and Samaria that they've just ignored it and allowed our enemies to develop all the narratives that make us look like occupiers, genociders, etc., etc., etc. And now we have a whole generation of youth who are growing up who are totally without the basic knowledge of their own identity and their own state to stand up for themselves on campus or in schools. So hence, what we're working on right now is to reach out to these collegiates and reach out to these students and empower them to develop a little army, and hopefully that will grow. And when I was on this Berkeley campus, when I saw them doing that, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. So I went to the students and I said, write this sign for me. I'm an IDF soldier, ask me anything. And I took that sign and I walked in the middle of the street theater of all these anti-Israel activists like this. And then I had students walking up to me and asking questions. And the most important thing also that is not told to any of our kids, and even our college students, is don't pay attention to the activists. Forget them. They're not the target audience. They're brainwashed. If they want to wake up, they'll wake up when they want to wake up. The target audience is the bystanders. It's in order to give them enough information, whether they believe you or not, but it makes them doubt the protesters and the anti-Israel activists, saying, okay, they're a bunch of lunatics. And by me doing that, I'm an IDF officer, ask me anything, right? IDF soldier, I was an officer. That just did it. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And then they kept on walking. What we need is we need our students to be able to be proud enough to make a sign that says, I'm a proud Jew, ask me anything. I support Israel, ask me anything. And then be able to be there, not to interact with the anti-Israel activists, but to be able to impact their fellow Jews. Because one thing, whenever I talk to collegiate or high school students, I told them the following. And I actually had some people, they always ask me, what can I do on college campus to help Israel? And I give them a very simple answer. You might be disappointed, but nothing you do on college campus will help Israel. Israel will be fine with whatever you do or don't do. But the reason you should be standing up for Israel on college campus is because they are going after your Jewish identity. So if you don't know enough information about the Bible, about the Torah, about modern Jewish history, and about what's going on that they're attacking you today, then they're chipping away at your pride in being a Jew. And by you not being able to stand up for yourself in your proud identity of being a Jew, then all your friends are also going to have their pride and confidence broken about their Jewish identity. So you want to be able to stand up for yourself in defending Israel to protect your Jewish identity and help your friends around you. And that's the project we're working on right now, that we're looking for support in order to push this out in as big a way as possible and be able to reach as many students around the country as possible, as many institutions as possible. So that's who I am. Why am I here tonight to talk to you? You have to understand. On the one hand, October 7th was a tragedy. The biggest tragedy since the Holocaust. What I want to do with you tonight is, while focusing on the tragedy and giving you a little more of the backstory of what happened to us, and I'm sure you've heard some stories of different speakers from different perspectives or hostages, families or survivors. I don't know who's come to Phoenix or not. So I'm going to give you my personal story to understand what we experienced. But on top of that, I'm going to give you the bigger story of how this has impacted the Jewish people in a big way, the world in a big way, and also give you some optimism, even with this all, and some of the miracles. October 7th, Simchat Tova. My wife wakes up. 8 o'clock in the morning, minyan by us is 8:30. We're zocher to daven at Shlomo Katz's shul, just a 5-minute walk away from our home in Efrat. She wakes me up at 8 o'clock. Avi, did you hear that? I'm like, what? No, I didn't hear anything. 2 seconds later, boom, I heard it. All right, rockets were falling in the area, not in Gush Etzion, because otherwise the sirens would have gone off, so our sirens did not go off at that moment, but nearby, near enough that we can hear it. I'm like, whoa. And we hadn't had rockets in the Gush Etzion area for a long time. I get dressed for shul, run outside. First thing I see is a friend right outside my building on his phone. I'm like, Makara, Makoe, what's going on? And my friend said, we're at war. Just like that. 3 words, we're at war. It was 8:30 in the morning, rockets being shot all over Israel, and he told me, and this is 8:30 in the morning already, Hamas has infiltrated communities, and they're killing people in communities. All right, so at that moment, 8:30, we're very security-oriented. I'm a proud resettler, resettling my ancestral homeland, living in the Judean hills, from my Mirpeset. As I say, every Chag Shavuot, I tell my kids and all their friends, look down there, those fields outside Beit Lechem, David HaMelech was there. Ruth was working in those fields. Nomi was working in those fields, right? That's the bracha I get to have. Living mamash, overlooking the fields where the Shavuot holiday took place, all right? We're very security-oriented, plenty of people, whether reserve soldiers or connected with security. We already knew at 8:30 in the morning a massacre was going on. All right? And we already knew that friends were jumping down south to go do whatever was necessary to fight him. So, serious situation, run home, back to my wife. I tell her, give her the update. I pick up my phone. I'm a reserve soldier, so I know I can be called up for war at any moment. I'm already on top of the news. Ready to be called up. Our son calls. Our son is in the Army. He's in commando unit in the Army, paratrooper commando unit. Okay. And he calls to tell us that he's been called up. He was in the Army, and they're going down to Gaza. He's already on Simchat Torah morning. My other son is in reserves. He just finished yeshiva, the Hesder program a few months ago. He was home for Simchat Torah, and he also got on his phone, waiting to be called out. Then I went to check on my parents. I run down the hill. My parents already in their safe room. I think we already had 1 siren in that frat. When I was down by my parents, there was a 2nd siren. I'm in the safe room with my parents. Run back home. Now, because there are rockets falling in our area, we're not allowed to go anywhere further than like a minute and a half away from your home in order to run back into your safe room. So I couldn't go to Rabbi Shlomo Katz's shul, but there's a shul right outside my door. I'm a founding member of that shul. So I'm saying, okay, today we're going to Zeit Rana, which is right across the street from us. That if we have to go to a safe room, we're right nearby. We go to shul, only around 50 people left in shul. Usually, Simchat Torah, like 200, 300 people in shul. Mostly everyone left home already. Sorry, forgive me for this. 50 people there, they finish Musaf, and then they have to ask themselves, what are we going to do now? Are we going to do Hakafot or not? Understand, 1, we know rockets could be falling, and 2, we're all in a very depressed mood already, because we know a massacre's happening. We weren't kept in the dark. It's not like only after Simchat Torah we knew. No, we knew in the morning the massacre was taking place, and the Chayalim were fighting, and we knew it was a crazy situation. The decision was made, and I'm very happy this decision was made. We're going to do 1 hakafa. So it was the most spiritual hakafa in my whole life. Because it wasn't just a hakafa of singing and dancing with the Sifrei Torah out of happiness. It was deep, deep connection and prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be looking after our fellow Jews and our soldiers. And again, there was only 30, 40 people left in shul. But I know for myself it was important, And I know other people came up to me and my sons. My wife and I have 4 sons, so we end up being a dominant force when it comes to smachot or simcha occasions. And people came up to me afterwards saying, well, at the beginning I thought it was wrong, we shouldn't be doing it, we should go home. And I go, thank God we did that hakafa. It gave me so much koach doing that hakafa. And then at the end of that hakafa, another siren, we all went to the safe rooms, and then the rest of the day is basically waiting to be called up. And mincha time, went to shul for mincha, boom, called up. Had to go to Miluim, and basically I was in Miluim from Simchat Torah until I started my speaking tour, which I say is another type of Miluim, trying to help fellow Jews here in America connect to the truth and connect to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. Right now we have 1 son in Gaza, so Bezrat Hashem, no news is good news. Maybe to hear when it gets out. No clue when it's going to come out. Everything should be okay. That was our October 7th. Right? And that's just one story out of many to just understand the reality of what Am Yisrael was going through on Simchat Torah. Now, before I go into the negative, I want to start with the positive. I call myself a realistic optimist. And there's always a silver lining, and especially if you believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're always supposed to have an understanding there's a silver lining, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's best. I want to give over some of the little miracles that show something spiritual is going on. Yes, we're at war. Yes, we're at war against an enemy, using tanks and guns and artillery, but even bigger than this physical war, there's a spiritual war going on. And I want to give you some of the positive of the spiritual war. And I'm sure some of you have seen some of these videos, but you have to understand and internalize how unbelievable they are. Not just to say, oh, it's a nice video. Oh, it's nice. No. Really internalize how unbelievable it is. The fact that there are videos going around of guys learning Torah in Gaza. The fact there are videos and pictures going around of a Chabad of Gaza in the middle of Khan Yunis. The fact that there are minyanim taking place in Gaza. The fact that Shema Yisrael is being said by Chayalim in Gaza. Right? And the biggest one of all is it's a more funny one, and it's sort of like a joke, but there's truth to it. And it's a true story. 1 week into the war, this was a screenshot that was going around. A father contacted his daughter, who just joined the Israeli army, saying, oh, now you're in the Israeli army, and she's a religious girl. It's a great place to find a good yeshiva. To find a good religious guy who's also a Tzioni, right? Great place to find a yeshiva. And the daughter writes back to her father, Dad, a week ago, that would have been true. But now, all the Chayalim are wearing a tzitzit and wearing a kippah. I don't know if it's religious anymore. Okay? Now, that's a little exaggerated. Not everyone. But what's true is, yes, many Chayalim right now, regardless of their personal religious level, are whether wearing tzitzit, putting on tefillin, wearing a kippah, praying, singing Shema Yisrael, taking part in the Hanukkah lightings, right? The amount of Hanukkah lightings taking place from all these Chayalim. We are a stronger nation than yesterday. We are a stronger nation than 10 years ago. We are a stronger nation than 50 years ago. And we are winning the spiritual battle. And at the end of the day, we are believing Jews regardless of our religious level. And we know that it's not just what happens physically that is what brings about the ultimate outcome. It's also our spiritual level that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking for. So good things are happening with Am Yisrael right now. Not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. To take everything into perspective. For instance, again, I imagine some of you I finished Shabbat to wake up to the news, not wake up, to realize the news that just came out of Israel. About the 3 hostages that unfortunately were just killed by Israeli fire. And I just started looking over the news reporting of it. And my heart goes out to these 3 soldiers. Okay, obviously crying for the 3 hostages. But the way that the Jewish reported is making these 3 soldiers, or maybe their commanders, feel guilty for what they did is disgusting and wrong. Our holy, holy idea of soldiers should be given the benefit of the doubt. The ones responsible for the death of these 3 hostages was Hamas for capturing them, for putting them in the middle of a war zone. We have no clue how they got there at that moment. Who undressed them? Was it them they got undressed? No clue. We're never going to know because they're not around to tell us anymore. But to blame the soldiers for killing them, the soldiers who have to look for snipers everywhere, who look for Hamas guys who are dressed like civilians, who that they could be coming out of the ground any place, to be blaming them for this is horrendous. And again, that's part of the message. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't leave whatever agenda being driven by journalists or politicians or lay leaders. Don't listen to them. Use your gut instinct. Use your God-given common sense to think for yourself and figure things out. And always think of the big picture and remember of the spiritual process that's going on with the Jewish people today, which is positive. The achdus going on today is unbelievable. And another thing, people complain, right? Like, oh my God, why are we donating for equipment for the Israeli army? I don't know how many people here were involved in donating towards that. And people were looking at the negative. And I'm like, no, you're looking at it all wrong. All right? Forget about the fact that the Israeli army wasn't prepared. That, and I've been talking about that for 30 years also. Let's put that aside. I'm looking at the positive of the spiritual process. The Jewish people, we're taking responsibility for ourselves. We can no longer outsource what's going to happen to us to our leaders. They're not doing the job. They're not doing the job. But it's positive that it's the Jewish people who are coming to life to do the job. I look at that positively. All the Jewish people are coming to defend ourselves. It's okay. The army wasn't ready. Army Israel is ready. We're buying the equipment necessary for the army to have. And it's now a joint effort. It's a unity effort. We're unifying. Are things going to still happen to divide us? Yeah, there are always going to be things that are going to come up to divide us. But I think we're in a much better place to move forward, unified, to deal with the future things that are going to come our way. So again, I'm looking at the positive. It's a positive process we're experiencing. Now I want to put Gaza into perspective. Right? Because many of us who know probably have forgotten. And if you didn't, then call it kavod. But many of the younger generation don't even know. I was zoche to serve in the Golani Brigade back in 1993, between 1993 and 1995. Back then I served in Gaza. My unit was the last unit to close up the last army base in Gaza City. Right? Because it was unfortunately during the Oslo process when Rabin was already deciding Gaza and Jericho first. Packing up the Israeli army out of Gaza. So my unit was the last unit out of Gaza City. The worst thing that would happen to us when we were patrolling Gaza was what? Having stones thrown at us. That's what our situation was when they started the Oslo peace process that was supposed to bring peace. And me and my friends and family were protesting, knowing that it would bring war and more terror. So back in 1993, our worst terror that we experienced in Gaza was stones. Right? At that same time, I was patrolling Judean, Samaria. I remember at one point in time, me and my fellow soldiers were in charge of a whole Arab village. Guess how many soldiers we were in that Arab village? Again, 1994. How many soldiers to manage a whole Arab village? Guess. 10. 10. Give me more. More guesses. Get it? Come on, you're not wrong. Give me a guess.
20.
20. 4. We were 4 Arab soldiers to manage a whole Arab village in the Shomron. We used to do roadblocks in the day, patrols in the day, go into apartments at night if we had to arrest people, and back then we used to take down their Palestinian flags. 4 Israeli soldiers it was taking. Today, if you need to go into an Arab village, you need hundreds of IDF soldiers. This is what 30 years of peace have brought us. Right? So that's just perspective. And so the happy thing for me is that today, when I know my son's in Gaza, please God, Kadosh Baruch Hu should look after him and all our holy IDF soldiers in there right now. He's the first Abelo back there in Gaza, ever since I was the last one when I served back in 1993. Right? And Bezrat Hashem, we're on a better path. It's a painful path. It's a path the Jewish people have to learn. A lesson of reality that we've ignored all the signs around us. but we're on the path to fix the mistakes that have been made, unfortunately. Very, very painful, painful mistakes that have been made. So that's the reality. Now I want you to understand the reality of what we're dealing with in Israel. And I'm sure this you know, but it's just good to hear. We're not just fighting in Gaza. My unit, I wasn't sent to Gaza. My unit is responsible in Judea and Samaria, in Gush Etzion. I'm one of what's called Hagamar, Haganah Merchavit. Years ago, people understood that if a war happens, and all of the reserve soldiers were pulled out of their homes and their units in Judea and Samaria, no one would be left in Judea and Samaria to protect. So they set up special local units, reserve units, that the second everyone's called up to the borders for war, local people would take over all of the security positions to protect the Yishuvim, the towns and villages in Judea and Samaria. So I'm zocha that when I'm called up, I protect the home front, all right, of Gush Etzion. Everyone's called down south because now we know Hamas is a threat. All the soldiers were called up north. Why were all the soldiers called up north? Well, because we know Hezbollah is a threat, and we were just assuming, rightly so, that if Hamas was attacking, Hezbollah is going to attack. Not only that, but Hamas basically put into play the strategy of Hezbollah. Because years ago, it's already been known in Israel, I don't know if you've known this, but Hezbollah told us years ago that they're planning to infiltrate Israel, come through the border, through tunnels or however, go into Yishuvim in the northern, and then kidnap and kill. So now that it happened in the south, we know it can happen in the north. So all the soldiers are also up north. On top of that, why am I called up in Judea and Samaria? Because now many Israelis have woken up and realized, that's not me hiccuping. Okay? Because now as many Israelis have woken up and realized that the problem is not just the Arab Muslim Hamasnikim in Gaza, but we have those same Arab Muslim Hamasnikim in Judea and Samaria. I did a video a few weeks ago, basically when I called out the Palestinian Authority, explained how the Palestinian Authority is a paper tiger. First of all, the Palestinian Authority is basically Hamas. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu himself said this a few weeks ago, finally, after years, that he finally admitted the only difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority is the Palestinian Authority has a destruction plan to destroy Israel in stages, as opposed to Hamas's, let's do it immediately. Right? But putting that aside, the Palestinian Authority has no power. Just look right now, over the past few weeks, thank God the IDF have been going into Shechem, Kalkilia, Tulkarem. These are all places the Palestinian Authority is supposed to have control over. And here every day we're going and killing and arresting hundreds and hundreds of terrorists. And you can just watch the videos. You see them, hundreds and thousands of them with guns walking the streets. They're training the army to attack us. They're not a partner. And the reason there haven't been elections, I think, for 19 years for the Palestinian Authority is why? Because everyone knows if there would be elections, who would win? Hamas. Right? So Israelis have now woken up to realize, oh my God, not only do we not have a peace partner, but these people in Gaza are the same as our Arab Muslims in Judea and Samaria, and they can attack our Yishuvim and Yudan and Sharon any day. So now we have the front in Gaza, we have the front up the north, and we have the front basically all in Judea and Samaria. And then you have some Israeli Jews waking up and realizing, wait a second, while we'd like to believe that we have a nice peaceful coexistence with our Arab Muslim Israeli citizens, well, that's now in question also. How many of them are seriously interested in living in peace with us? As opposed to taking advantage of their citizenship, and then one day join their brothers to attack us, like they did just a few years ago, during the last campaign with Gaza. So all of a sudden, all of Israel is a front. But we don't know what Arab to trust, which I believe is the reality, that we've been living and having our heads in the sand for all these years, thinking otherwise. I'm a big chassid of an expert in Israel on Islam in the Middle East. His name is Dr. Mordechai Kedar. And Dr. Mordechai Kedar's solution for Israel is very, very simple. He's been saying this for years. He goes, do not think for a second that we can exist here without a strong army. We're only going to have peace when all of our Arab enemies are afraid of us, which means we always have to be as strong as possible so that they never think about lifting a pinky to attack us. That's the solution. That's the reality. Which unfortunately, the Jewish world we're disconnected from. We've been disconnected from for years. So we want to believe in peace. We want to believe that our Arab Muslim neighbors are like us. But like I tell people, it's the Middle East. It's not Kansas. It's a different culture. I was in Columbia University for my graduate degree, organizational psychology, and part of the course work was conflict resolution. And I was there during the year 2000. So I was in this conflict resolution semester when the Camp David Accords were taking place. Right? At the time, 2000, for those who do not remember, that was President Clinton bringing in the arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak. Right? And all semester, the professor is teaching us. Again, this is an auditorium of like 1,000 students, right? One of those big courses at Columbia. And all semester, the professor is teaching us the only way to resolve conflict between different cultures is by making sure those cultures first understand one another. To the level, and again, I remember this, to the level that do you use a fork? Do you use a spoon? Do you look in their eyes? Do you not look in their eyes? Only after a mediator helps the two cultures to understand and respect one another's culture, only then can you then resolve the conflict. And again, this is talking about international conflicts. Camp David Accords are announced, and the professor gets up and in front of the whole auditorium, we're going to have peace, right? So I raise my hand, little Javier, this big auditorium with 1,000 students. I'm like, Professor, according to everything you taught us all semester long, I can promise you there won't be peace. Because this is another peace process based on Western culture being imposed in an area of the world that is a totally different culture. All the others will fail. This is going to fail. He screamed at me in front of the whole auditorium. Right? It didn't take a week for Yasser Arafat to kill the Camp David Accords, which to this day, I think, if I remember correctly, President Clinton at the time, still today says he's upset that Arafat stabbed him in the back, that he did that, because he thought it was really possible. And the professor gets up. Did I get an apology? No apology, just moved on. But again, if you understand reality, and it was clear, none of these peace processes will work, because they're Western-oriented peace process being implemented in the Middle East. That's not Kansas. It's the Middle East. So you have to talk to people who understand the Middle East, who understand Arabic, who take seriously what the Arabs say. There was someone today who told me, someone came up to me in shul after I spoke, he goes, he knows Arabic. He goes, I was reading Al Jazeera 8 months ago. Iran was saying it's time to attack Israel. It was in Al Jazeera, it was in the news. It's not like you don't need an intelligence service to read Al Jazeera. But the Jewish world and Israeli leadership, we prefer to, no, everything's going to be okay. We just give them money, they have jobs, they have economy. Because who thinks like that? We think like that. Because we're Western-minded people who think life is the most important thing. And having food on your table for your kids is the most important thing. Why would you risk that? And we think they're rationally minded according to our value system. But no, the Middle East, the Islamic religion, is a different value system. It's a different culture. And in order to deal with it, we have to respect it. Both in order to protect ourselves and in order to have a proper relationship with them. Because when we don't respect it, when we think that they have the same culture as us, the same values as us, they don't respect us. Because they see that we're not taking ourselves and our own identity seriously. Israel's looked at as a laughingstock in the Middle East because they're proud of their religious identity, and then they see a Jewish people that's not proud of its religious identity. It's like they make fun of us. They know Jerusalem belongs to the Jews. It's in the Quran. The Quran says clearly Israel belongs to the Jewish people. I can't tell you the verse and where it is. It says it in there. All you have to do is point it out to the Muslim and they'll have to agree to it. But they laugh at us because they see a people that doesn't take its own holy sites seriously. What people would outsource its holy sites to a different people? What people would do that? What self-respecting people would allow its holiest sites to be run and desecrated by a different people? But they see us doing that willingly. So they laugh at us. Right? So the process taking place, again, goes to a spiritual process. We're going through We're going through a talich for the Jewish people to be returning to ourselves. Who are we? What's our connection to Israel? Why are we there? What kind of country are we supposed to make? And I promise you, the second we answer that as a people, we're going to have peace with the Arab Muslim world. Because they're going to know they can't deal with us. Because we're going to be a proud people standing up for ourselves, and then we'll be respected. Not just because of our strong economy. So, again, while I'm trying to paint a picture for you of reality, and on the one hand, it's a scary reality, but on the other hand, we're winning. So I don't want you to be scared. And I want you to be jumping on a plane tomorrow to come to Israel. Meaning, don't be scared. All right? And I'll tell you why you should be scared. So now, 2 miracles that, again, I spoke about earlier, so forgive me for repeating myself. 2 miracles is very important for you to understand. Took place on October 7th. Again, understanding there was a tragedy and being sad about that tragedy, but then understanding the bigger picture. Miracle number 1. The Israeli army, this is not the miracle, but the facts are the Israeli army was not there to protect the Jews who were massacred. Okay? For whatever reason, and that's a whole different topic, which you can ask me about afterwards, let's go into. They weren't there. Human nature is what? When there's a fire, which direction do you run?
Away.
Away from the fire. Right? The morning of October 7th, what did I tell you? I had friends, and I know people, and there were hundreds, if not 1,000, whatever, I have no clue the exact number, of proud Jews who, whether they had a uniform or didn't have a uniform, whether they had a gun or didn't have a gun, they ran into the hellfire to fight the terrorists. Now understand this. Not everyone pays attention to this. If those individual Jews, they weren't commanded to go down, no commanding officer, no organized groups, individuals, they all went there. If they had not done that, the tragedy wouldn't have been 1,400 killed, murdered, massacred Jews. It would have been tens of thousands of massacred Jews. That's a miracle. It's a miracle that we have a generation of proud Jews willing to risk their lives and run into the fire even though they were not commanded to do so. No organized units. Right? That is something we have to be thankful for. In the context of the tragedy, understand the tragedy would have been much, much worse. Okay? So that's number 1. Miracle number 2, and again, this is something that I heard from Dr. Mordechai Kedar, which he heard from his intelligence sources in the Muslim world 8 months ago. He actually wrote an article in the Israeli paper Makor Rishon 8 months ago, specifying this, how Iran had a well thought out plan to attack Israel, shooting rockets from Iran, having its proxies in Syria shoot at Israel, its proxies in Yemen shooting at Israel, having its proxies Hezbollah in Lebanon shoot at Israel, and Hamas, while Hamas and Hezbollah also infiltrate with soldiers, all at the same time. That was what they were planning to do. The fact that Hamas attacked alone, without coordinating first with Iran, for whatever reason, which we'll probably never know, is a huge, huge miracle. Because I would not be speaking with you today if Iran's plan had come to fruition. And the good news is that now, because of what happened on the Gaza border, the Israeli people have woken up, Israeli leadership has woken up, military intelligence leadership has woken up, they now know this plan, they're now poo-pooing it. Unfortunately, they poo-pooed it until now. They didn't take it seriously. They didn't take it seriously. Mordechai Kedar wrote about it, Al Jazeera wrote about it, it was out there, it was known. Leadership didn't take it seriously. Now we're not going to be surprised. That's a huge bracha. With all the tragedy, we have to look at the positive. Huge bracha, now we're prepared. It's not going to happen. Huge bracha, now we're prepared to Yudan Sharon. If they try to do things, we're prepared. Does that mean that no one's going to get hurt? No, but we're prepared. The Jewish people have been woken up. We've gone through a wake-up process. Now, tying it back to what I started off with. All right? I think the biggest surprise for most Jews, especially American Jews, but plenty of Jews in Israel as well, as a result of the tragedy that took place on October 7th. Again, the biggest tragedy of all the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Here we expected sympathy from the world. You were just massacred. But not only are we not receiving a high enough level of sympathy, especially from the Western moral, human rights, progressive, right, world, we're seeing a spike in anti-Semitism as a result. And Jews are going crazy. They can't figure it out. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And you have plenty of Jews right now who are questioning everything. Because it just doesn't make sense. And again, I'm going to take the view for a second of a more progressive Jew, who they're thinking to themselves, I was out in the streets protesting for BLM. I was out in the streets protesting LGBTQ. I was out in the streets protesting Ukraine. I was out in the street protesting Syria. Right? But you're not protesting with me or giving me sympathy for what's happening to the Jews? There's a big crisis going on right now within the Jewish people. And the truth is, yeah, this has led a spike in anti-Semitism. And I can tell you exactly why. And I'd love to hear your comments afterwards if you believe this is correct or incorrect. But for years, even before October 7th, I've been talking to people because I've been speaking about the growth of anti-Semitism for years. Because it was clear to me that it's growing and growing and growing. Especially during Obama's term, I was talking about the support he was giving to all the progressive organizations on college. It was clear it was leading to a growth of anti-Semitism. No one wanted to listen. We were blessed, or some of us were blessed, and each of you will put yourselves in a different timeline here, to live most of our lives in what I call the post-Holocaust bubble. Because the post-Holocaust bubble is an anomaly. Before the Holocaust, every Jew knew anti-Semitism. Whether you lived in things were a little better or a little worse, anti-Semitism existed. After the Holocaust, the non-Jewish Western world was shocked at how horrible they were, and all of a sudden anti-Semitism became taboo. But we, especially living in the Western world over this post-Holocaust era, we came to think, that's it. Anti-Semitism is going away. Okay, we still need to fight it, we still need more Holocaust education, more Holocaust museums, but we can fight it, so it's going away. Our children and grandchildren were born thinking that, yeah, no issue with anti-Semitism. But my perspective is, no. What we're experiencing today is the beginning of going back to normalcy, where anti-Semitism is normal in Jewish history, in Jewish existence. We were just blessed to live in one of the time periods where it was taboo. And if you go into the psyche of anti-Semites, and I actually said this back in 2005, one of my arguments against the disengagement at the time, I said, by us destroying Jewish communities and a Jewish state expelling Jews from their homes and destroying the communities, that's going to lead in a spike in anti-Semitism. Because if the Goyim say, oh my God, look what the Jews are doing to the Jews. We can do bad things too. They're doing bad things to themselves. So it was clear to me back in 2005 would lead to a spike in anti-Semitism also. So then the question is, what are we doing? What are we doing today? How are we dealing with this? Which again comes back to my answer. As I said in the beginning, we can't fight people's feelings of hating us, but we can impose a confidence and a pride in the Jewish identity to help as many Jews as possible learn how to live in this new reality, which is really an old new reality. Not something new, just something we forgot, because we were zoche, we were blessed to grow up when this didn't exist to the level that it exists today. And again, I want to make this clear. We're living in a generation now post-October 7th where it's never been clear that evil exists. And everyone has a decision to make. Are you for evil or you're against evil? And there are three different categories of people that you could see out there in the open. You have the people who say, oh my God, this is evil, it has to be destroyed. therefore we have to support Israel to get rid of this. Because it's not only evil against them, it's evil that's going to come after us. Then you have another category saying, no, it's not evil. That exists. Believe it or not, I think it's the third category that's the most dangerous. It's those people who say, oh yeah, it's evil, but no, you can't get rid of it. And there are plenty of politicians and leaders of countries that are taking that exact line. Why is that the most dangerous? Because you can deal with the ones who disagree, say it's not evil. Right? You deal with them. They're delegitimized. They delegitimize themselves by ignoring the evil. Okay? But the people who say it's evil, but they don't support Israel in getting rid of it, they're the most problematic because they are the ones allowing for the continuation of this evil, for the continuation of Jews to get killed. Now, Israel has 3 geopolitical challenges in ending the evil against us. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have the answer to tell you how do we answer these challenges, but I will tell you, you have to believe in God. What are these 3 geopolitical challenges? Who are the 3 main funders of our enemies? Number 1, Iran. Number 2, Qatar. Number 3,
Yes.
the United Nations. Okay, UNRWA. UNRWA is Hamas. Okay? How would they get rid of these challenges? Why are they challenges? Well, Israel can't get rid of Iran without the United States. Iran's gotten its billions over the past decade or so from the United States. How are we supposed to do that? Challenge number 1. How are we supposed to stop the head of the snake if they're getting their money to give to Hezbollah and give to Hamas from your taxpayer money? Right? So there's a disconnect there in U.S. foreign policy. Now, is Israel supposed to stop that? We can't tell America to stop giving money to Iran. That's American foreign policy. Qatar. U.S. biggest military base is in Qatar. How is Israel supposed to stop Qatar from funding Hamas? That should be America's interest. I mean, I would say, I heard this, it was a Caroline Glick video or interview she did in the beginning. She said, the way we can get our hostages back today is if the United States threatens Qatar and says, well, we'll pull our base out of Qatar if you don't get the hostages out. And Qatar is the mediator. They give the money to Hamas to kill us. They use Al Jazeera to legitimize the hatred of Jews and hatred of America. And America has its base there. And yet Qatar is looked at as the neutral mediator. All that's needed is America, Biden administration, say Qatar, hey guys, get the hostages out now or we pull our base. What do you think Qatar's going to do? I don't think Qatar's going to pull a bluff. I think they're going to want the U.S. base there. The problem isn't Qatar. The Qatar is we don't have an administration here willing to make that threat. And once again, how is Israel supposed to kill the head of the snake that's funding our enemies if it has U.S. support to be able to do so, whether tacit or not? And then challenge number 3, the UN. Anyone who knows, there's plenty of information out there, UNRWA is basically Hamas. All the schools, all the kindergartens, all the camps, they're teaching these kids to kill Jews. UNRWA, educational facilities. UNRWA, teachers. UNRWA's funded United Nations money, U.S. taxpayer money, European money. I'm in touch with U.S. politicians who are calling for the defunding of UNRWA. But I'm sorry, the U.S. Jewish organizations have been silent on this issue for too long. Like, why? How can you trust when an administration says that it's fighting anti-Semitism when it's literally giving funds and wants to give funds that goes towards genocide of Jews? You're funding anti-Semitism. You're not fighting anti-Semitism. And like some people, like people who hate Trump, argue with me. I'm like, wait a second, put Trump aside a second. You hate Trump? Fine, hate Trump. Trump made the decision to defund UNRWA. All right? Good decision? Good decision. Great. Biden comes into office. You hate Trump? Hate Trump. Biden didn't have to do anything. Nothing. Just let the defunding continue. But he actively made a decision to go back on policy to fund UNRWA, which is funding the killing of Jews. So aren't you upset about that? They usually get a blank face. They don't want to answer. Too much of a corner that they don't want to deal with. But that's our reality. Those are the 3 geopolitical challenges we have that if you really think about it, Israel's between a rock and a hard place. Because we can't beat our enemies. We can't because our enemies have international support to kill us. It's very, very sad when you think about it and internalize it. You want to think the Western world, you want to think America, you want to think European countries once in a while, that they're supportive of us, but actions are louder than words. And the actions, literally funding the killing of Jews, our own governments. So how are we going to win? I don't know how we're going to win, but like I said, it's a spiritual battle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting to look from us. And we just experienced the Hanukkah holiday. And the Hanukkah holiday also. You think the Maccabees knew how they were going to win? Now I'm going to tell you the biggest difference between the Hanukkah holiday and now. Because again, we won the Hanukkah holiday, we're going to win now. What's the biggest difference? The Maccabees were a tiny minority of Jews. Tiny minority of Jews. Most of the Jews who lived in Israel at that time were Hellenized. They were upset at the Maccabees. Like, really learn the history of Hanukkah, not just the stories that were told in elementary school. The Maccabees were a minority of Jews that even though they were despised by their own fellow Jews in the land of Israel, they fought the Greek-Syrian Empire anyway. And they won. So what's the major difference between today? Today, most Jews, even though we're westernized, most Jews were proud Jews wanting to stand up and be Maccabees. Definitely the Jews in Israel, and I believe, not necessarily a majority of Jews in America, but a majority of committed Jews in America. That's the major difference, which also goes back to why I'm positive. Because ultimately, it's the spiritual process we're going through as a people, returning to ourselves. That's going to be the deciding factor of whether we're going to win or not. Because we have to do what we have to do, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do the rest. So we can be rational only to a certain point. And then we have to say, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's got things in control. All right? And the biggest wake-up call of all, and this is when I talk to non-Jews, especially, is for America. And for Americans. Because, and I'll give you an example, in Britain, there was an interview where a British politician was asked about the Muslim anti-Israel protests taking place in the streets of London. And he goes, I don't understand it. Why are they using violence? And forgive me if I don't have a good British accent. Don't have any British accent. I don't understand. Why are they using violence against our policemen? Why are they desecrating our war monuments? Don't they know they're going to lose our support? Right? Not the Jews. They don't care about Jews being killed, but they're going to lose their support, right? That politician doesn't understand that those Muslims have no problem using violence against Britain because ultimately they want to take over Britain. It's not about Israel or the Jews. They're out against all the infidels. All the protests taking place, New York City, pro-genocide, pro-killing Jews. Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, the anti-Semitic attacks on Jews in the streets. Why should a Jew on a college campus who has he doesn't even know he's Jewish, all right? Or he's Jewish, but he has nothing to do with his Jewish identity, never been to Israel, knows nothing about Israel. What rationale can anyone come up with him being attacked because of Israel, except for understanding that he's being attacked because of anti-Semitism? Because in the eyes of our enemies, Israel and a Jew is interlinked. Every attack on Israel is an attack on a Jew. And then you really understand, and this I had a conference in Jerusalem just back in June, where anyone who remembers Elon Carr was the U.S. envoy for anti-Semitism in the Trump administration. So he was our keynote speaker in Jerusalem, and the whole conference was about exposing, unmasking anti-Semitism behind the Palestinian national movement. Because once you understand, the whole cause of Palestine was created in order to destroy Israel. It's the biggest anti-Semitic blood libel in all of Jewish history, which is treated as a logical cause that deserves support. See, like, how warped a reality we're living in and how much information our own children, whether in college or even Jewish high schools, are not given to understand the battlefield they are in. Because every day now as a Jew is a battlefield. Because every day the attacks are just going to grow and grow and grow. And it's not just about the Jew, it's about America and Americans. And this is something that we all should be starting to care about. Now, I don't know how many of you are going to like what my final point is, but my final point is to understand it's time to come home. And my plea to fellow Jews of why to come home, not because of anti-Semitism. I want Jews to come home because it's home. I mean, it's wonderful being in America and being in Phoenix, but I just was blessed to experience all of Hanukkah in a country where the whole country is celebrating Hanukkah. Like, why wouldn't a Jew want to be there? Why do I want to go back to living in New York City where the Christmas atmosphere is amazing? But anytime you see a Chanukiah, it's next to a tree. Like, why do I want it? Would I want to be in a place where the whole country is celebrating 8 days of Hanukkah? Like, that's the natural place we're supposed to be. So that's why I want Jews to come home. Because it's home. But if a Jew is not coming home because it's home, I want Jews to wake up and realize the world has changed. October 7th has changed the world. And it also should be a huge change, especially for the Jews. I just interviewed an 88-year-old woman who was born in Nazi Germany. Part of my Pulse Israel programs, I interview people, experts, people with interesting stories. She lives in New York. And I asked her a point-blank question. I said, people are saying that what we, the Jews, are experiencing in America today is comparable to 1933 Nazi Germany. What do you say? And she said, 100% correct. If I was younger, I would move to Israel. But I'm 88, so I'm not picking up now. So again, I don't want to scare anybody. And the biggest taina, the biggest claim anyone comes back to me is, oh, but Israel's not safe. You want to know something? I don't know whether I'm going to walk out of this house and I'll be hit by a car. But at least I know in Israel, in the end of the day, I do have an army, and I do have my own country to stand up for myself. And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. So, we Jews, like always, are the canary in the coal mine. And the first challenge is for Jews to realize, oh my God, we're the canary in the coal mine. And then it's for the non-Jews to wake up and realize, oh my God, the Jews are the canary in the coal mine. But the bottom line is, I don't want people to be scared. The Jewish people were going in the right direction, hence the spiritual direction. And I'll make this final comparison to Hanukkah. An unbelievable history teacher and tour guide in Israel. His name is Gershon HaKohen. I don't know if anyone knows. He lives in Hebron. I was once in one of his lectures when I was in Miluim, and it was a lecture about Hanukkah. And I don't remember the exact number he said, but he asked everyone, how many years did the battle of the Maccabim against the Greek Syrians take place? Because we celebrate 8 nights, right? So plenty of people like, oh, 8 days, 8 days, 8 whatever, 8 days, whatever. How many years?
75.
25?
75.
75? Okay. So Sam is saying 75, right? So I thought I remember Gershon HaKohen saying 75. It might have been 25, whichever it is. It's one of the two. The bottom line is he was telling us that the story of Hanukkah was an up and down battle, right? That took a long time. It wasn't one battle was over. It was ups and downs. Not only that, the Maccabim liberated Har HaBayit, and then they lost Har HaBayit, and they liberated Har HaBayit, and they lost Har HaBayit. I don't know exactly how many times. Maybe the end of the story, when they finally rededicated the Beit HaMikdash, and the oil lasted for 8 days, was at the end of, whether again, 25 years or 75 years. It was one big war with a lot of little battles. And what I try to help people understand is that what we're experiencing today, we didn't have the War of Independence in 1948, and the Six-Day War in 1967, and the Yom Kippur War in 1973, and the Lebanon War in 1982. We're in the 76th year of the War of Independence. Same enemy, the same goal to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. And Jews have to get that into their mind. Because we're in a long Geula, redemption process. And we're blessed to live in a generation to be part of it. And and we're going to have ups and we're going to have downs. But keep on looking on the positive trajectory. Because we're going in the right direction. Focus on that. Talk about the bad, be sad about the tragedies, but don't lose sight of the positive trajectory. Alright? And the final thing is, again, thank you everyone for coming. And I'm looking for support to help continue the work we are doing to make this happen, especially to reach out to the college students and high school students. So if you or you know people who would be interested, please let me know. But Be'ezrat Hashem, I look forward to seeing you all in Israel. And if you come visit in the meantime, let me know. It'll be a pleasure seeing you in Israel. If there are any questions, B'simcha.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.